Hello again guys, welcome back to the channel. In today's video we're going to do a mini review of the Carenado Mooney Ovation. In the video we'll be carrying out a flight from Larnaka airport in Cyprus over to the other end of the island and landing in Paphos airport. And then at the end do a slightly more thorough breakdown and review on the aircraft. I had no idea this aircraft was coming out, I just saw it in the marketplace. And it's very much the kind of aircraft that I was looking for within the sim. A steam gauge cockpit with retractable landing gear and a nice high cruise speed. So I instantly decided to purchase it, and I thought I would do a mini review just to help anyone else that's also considering a purchase. As you can see from the external model, they've done a really nice job, as is usually the case with Carenado. The visual model is really nicely done. All the usual sort of external and static elements you'd expect to see there. We've got some chocks, some traffic cones, an external power unit, as well as a tow bar. Also quite nicely you can remove the co-pilot and the pilot from the cockpit, and the cockpit door and passenger door open as well. As is usually the case with Carenado though, the external models are always done very nicely. It's usually the systems depth and the flight model that tends to let the aircraft down. So we'll jump into the cockpit now, we'll begin the flight and we'll discuss more about the systems and the flight model once we're in the air. So here we are in the cockpit of the Mooney Ovation. As you can see, they've done a really nice job with the cockpit. The texturing's great, all the switches seem to be clickable, the sound is really nice as well. Overall a really good job from Carenado, much better than some of their past attempts. So very happy with the interior of the aircraft. Anyway, we'll get the aircraft started up now and we'll discuss a bit more once we're in the air. So before start checklist, pre-flight inspection completed. Seatbelts and harnesses are secure. Fuel selector handle set to the fullest tank. The tank's evenly fueled right now, so we'll leave it on the left. Parking brake is on. Magneto starter switch is off. Radio master switch off. Landing gear selector is down. Mixture control is idle cutoff. Propeller, go high RPM. Throttle is closed. Electric boost pump is off. All external lights are off. Circuit breakers are all in. And the alternate static air is off. So to start the engine, propeller control high RPM, throttle 1/4 of an inch open, master switch on, electric fuel boost pump switch on momentarily. Okay, mixture control full forward. Checking the prop area is clear. Clear prop! Okay, good start on the engine. Oil pressure is in the green. And the oil temperature is rising. Turn the nav lights and the rotating beacon on. Turn the taxi light on in preparation for the taxi. And we'll now call for the taxi. So Larnaka ground 119.4. And we'll grab a quick ASUS as well before we get going. 12655.
Larnaka Airport information whiskey 0500
Okay, so the altimeter is set. We set the heading bug for the runway heading. And we'll request a departure out to the west.
Larnaka ground Golf, India Tango Bravo Sierra with Whiskey request taxi for takeoff west departure.
Golf, India Tango Bravo Sierra taxi to and hold short at runway 22 using taxiway Alpha. Contact tower on 130.2 and ready.
Taxi to and hold short runway 22 via taxiway Alpha Tango Bravo Sierra.
Okay, so taxiing for runway 22, we've got the tower tuned on standby. Release the park brake. Area is clear. Again, as you can hear, the sound is really nice actually in this aircraft. Taxis quite nicely as well, doesn't need a lot of power to get her moving.
Hold position, caution other traffic. Tango Bravo Sierra, continue taxi.
Roger, Tango Bravo Sierra.
Just about to say we're going to disregard that anyway, but seems we passed whatever was blocking us. The wind is looking pretty calm looking at the windsock. We'll just get to the holding point of the runway and then we'll turn into wind, do a quick run up before we get going. So let's swing the aircraft around here. A little bit more. Okay, that puts us about into wind. Set the parking brake. Full takeoff checklist, parking brake set, controls. Full free and in the correct sense. Radio master is on. Instruments and radios checked and set. Just briefly set up the radios now. So we want 1128 on the OR1. And we'll be departing on a heading of 255. And then we'll change over to the Paphos VOR about halfway through the flight. Instruments are checked. Strobe lights and rotating beacon on. We'll leave the strobe lights till we enter the runway. Annunciator lights are checked. Trim setting. Trim is set for takeoff. Okay, we'll throttle up now to 2000 RPM. We'll do a mag check. So there's 2000 RPM. There's 30 RPM drop. Back up to 2000. Same on the other side. So the magnetos are within limits. Check the engine RPM. good, and we'll throttle back to idle. So idling around 750, which is checked. And we'll take one stage of flap for the takeoff. So flaps are set. Boost pump can go on. And we'll turn the strobes and the landing lights on as we're about to enter the runway. So part brake off, tune over to tower now, and we'll request the takeoff clearance.
Larnaka Tower Golf, India Tango Bravo Sierra at runway 22 ready for takeoff departure to the west.
Golf, India Tango Bravo Sierra cleared for takeoff runway 22 west departure approved.
Okay, we are clear for takeoff, it's clear on approach, and it's clear upwind.
Cleared for takeoff runway 22 Tango Bravo Sierra.
So let's go, we'll go full power. Again, really nice sound from the aircraft actually. So, RPM's checked, temperature and pressures are in the green. Coming back on the stick, tapping the brakes, gear up. And we'll climb away at 70 knots initially. So the gear is up.
Tango Bravo Sierra, continue for west departure. I will contact you next when you leave my airspace.
Larnaka Tower Golf, India Tango Bravo Sierra continue for west departure.
And the flaps can come up. For the climb we'll come back to 26 inches of manifold pressure. And we'll start our turn out towards the west now. Just allow the aircraft to accelerate a little, up to around 100 knots. And climbing to 4,000 feet. Aircraft flies very nicely, very smoothly. Maybe feels a touch like it's lacking in some inertia, but yeah, overall very pleasant to fly. Intercepting the VOR radio outbound now.
Bravo Sierra, you are leaving my airspace. Frequency change approved.
Larnaka Tower Golf, India Tango Bravo Sierra frequency change.
So we'll tune Larnaka approach 1212. And request transition through their airspace.
Larnaka approach Golf, India Tango Bravo Sierra is type 3 miles west of Larnaka, 3,200 feet. Request clearance to transition Charlie airspace.
Golf, India Tango Bravo Sierra Larnaka approach. Squawk 0701.
Squawk 0701 Tango Bravo Sierra.
Just get the aircraft leveled out first.
Tango Bravo Sierra radar contact 4 miles west of Larnaka, 3,800 feet.
there's 4,000 feet. Just briefly set the autopilot whilst we get everything set up. Just climbed a little bit there, descend back down. And we'll come back on the power. Okay, we'll set the squawk, so we wanted 0701. Let's double check. And Carenado very helpfully give us some power settings up on the sun visor, so we'll try one of those and see how that works out for us. 4,000 feet. Go with 75% power initially, just to see what sort of speed that gives us. And we'll go with 2,400 RPM. So 23.2 on the manifold. Actually, we've already got 2,300 set, so we'll try that. 24.2 it calls for. It's going to give us a very high cruising speed, so actually we'll go for a lower power setting. Try 65%. 21.7. So that should give us a really nice cruise speed. Fuel pump can go off now. It's rather a loud and annoying noise. And we'll turn the landing and the taxi lights off. We'll tune the Paphos VOR on the standby. Is 1179. Oops, wrong one. And it's a 60 mile leg, so when we're 30 miles from Larnaka we'll tune Paphos. Pretty abrupt the autopilot control there, probably not realistic. Anyway, it should make us, should keep us at 4,000 feet now. So got the flight director on, autopilot's engaged, heading and altitude is captured now. We won't bother leaning the engine today, we're only at 4,000 feet and she seems to be humming along quite nicely. Doing a ground speed of 160 knots currently, which is pretty good. So it should be about 20 minutes to Paphos. So everything's trimmed out nicely now. That's giving us a fuel flow of 11.5 gallons an hour. And according to the Carenado chart, we should be getting 11.8, so that's pretty accurate. I don't have a real world chart to hand, unfortunately, but I would assume whatever Carenado used up here is probably representative of the real aircraft. So we're still transiting through the Larnaka airspace at the moment, just approaching the Troodos Mountains currently. Anyway, to talk more about the aircraft, as you can see overall it's actually a really nice job from Carenado. They're sort of known for being very much eye candy and pretty weak in other areas usually. And I'm not saying that this aircraft is study level, but the overall job they've done with it's very nice. It's certainly a really great visual model as always. We'll take a look at the external model in just a second. As I say, the internal model is lovely, the sound's really good.
Tango Bravo Sierra, contact airport area approach on Albany 23.6.
123.6. Tango Bravo Sierra. Acroterry approach Golf, India Tango Bravo Sierra, 4,000 feet.
Golf, India Tango Bravo Sierra, Acroterry approach, continue as planned. Altimeter 29.92.
Seems to handle pretty nicely overall. Once again, I think maybe just a touch sensitive and feels a little bit light on the flight model, but again, overall really, really nice. Flies very nicely, very smooth. And we'll take a little look outside now at the external model of the aircraft. So we're just passing Acroterry now off the left wing, and you can see Limassol just behind the left wing. Some sort of dam and reservoir here by the looks of it. And we're now 30 miles outside of Larnaka, so we'll change over to the Paphos VOR. "20 miles to run till Paphos. Be about 8 minutes. So the avionics all working really nicely in the aircraft. Haven't had any issues there. The only minor gripe I would have so far is that the numbers in the Nav2 radio seem to be somewhat offset from where they should be. Hopefully Carenado will sort that out in a future update. Again, very minor niggle though, everything else seems very well done actually. Come slightly right of track just to get back on course. And we're currently in the Acroterry airspace, which extends up to 20,000 feet. Once we get into the Paphos airspace, we'll call up the tower and request a landing. And the Paphos airspace begins about 16 miles before Paphos, so we can call up the tower now actually. So tower 130625. Request a full stop landing.
Paphos Tower Golf, India Tango Bravo Sierra is 18 miles east with Yankee to land.
Golf,
Okay, so that's nice and easy for us. A straight in approach onto 29er, which is almost on the heading we're on now, so we'll just continue on the heading. I think I can already make out the runway actually, just off the nose at around 12 o'clock. Burned 4 gallons on the left tank now, so we'll change over to the right tank before the landing. We'll shortly run through the before landing checklist. We'll just hold off for a few minutes until we get a little bit closer to Paphos. See the detail in the cabin is just as nice as the front of the cockpit as well. Yeah, really overall struggling to find too many things to complain about with this aircraft. I'm really happy Carenado brought it out as well. I was somewhat interested in the Cessna 182, but for me I just much prefer my aircraft still with steam gauges, and to have something like this, retractable gear, steam gauges, nice high cruising speed, absolutely perfect for a new sim. So you can see Paphos just on the edge of the southern coast. We'll actually come left a few degrees just to line up better with runway 29. You can already make out the runway, as I said. We'll start our descent now as well. We'll try the autopilot again, see if that works any better this time. So come down to 2,000 feet. Bit fiddly. This is pull for VS. Okay. Fortunately, I didn't see what altitude we actually set. So that click spot's a little bit fiddly. That could maybe use some work, but again, a very minor niggle. Come back on the power now for the descent. And in fact, we'll try the speed brakes as well. The speed brakes are fitted to the Mooney just to help prevent shock cooling the engine. It's a very slick aircraft, so it doesn't really like to slow down in a hurry. Rather than going from cruise power all the way back to idle power, and as I say, potentially shock cooling the engine, you can use the speed brakes to help you slow down and descend. So I'll keep the speed coming back actually so that we can extend the gear. Gear extension speed is 140 knots. Oh, we're below that now anyway, so we'll extend the gear. So the gear's down. Turn the landing and taxi light back on, and we'll turn the fuel pump back on as well. So the approach checklist: harnesses are secure, landing gear is extended, mixture is full rich, fuel selector is on the fullest tank, prop will go high RPM again, wing flaps will go full down on the approach. You can start taking some flap now. We'll take one stage of flap. Disengage the autopilot now. Flight director off. You can see the runway. Trim as required. Electric fuel boost pump is on, and the landing gear is down. So that's the approach checklist complete. It's coming back on the power. And we'll get rid of those speed brakes now. Take full flat. That'll help us keep our speed down. Oh, it's quite aggressive. The trim is pretty sensitive.
Clear to land runway 29er. 1266 to 3.
Clear to land runway 29er, Tango Bravo Sierra.
So we're clear to land. The wind's very light, straight down the runway. Take a full flap now. You do have to be careful with that trim. Keep slowing down. Come back to about 70 knots on the approach. She really doesn't like to slow down, which I believe is accurate. I believe the Mooney is a very slick aircraft in the real world. Still trimming back at the moment. Possibly a little bit conservative on the approach there, probably could have kept the speed up for a little bit longer. As I say, I mean, overall the aircraft flies really nicely. I think the only thing, it maybe just feels a touch light, but again, I don't know how the real Ovation actually handles. Not paying too much attention to my speed just yet. Still quite a long way out, and as I said, I probably was a bit conservative on the approach there, so we'll keep 80 knots just for now. We'll slow down again once we get a little bit closer to the threshold. One thing's for sure, this aircraft certainly not lacking in power. Very easy to let the speed get away. But it feels like a sort of thoroughbred of an aircraft, which again I'm sure the Mooney probably does in real life, so certainly not knocking it for that. And we'll come back on the speed again now. We'll aim to touch down in the touchdown zone and come off at the first exit on the left. So pitch is full fine, undercarriage is down, flaps are set, landing clearance is received, runway is clear. So coming back on the power, holding the aircraft off, touchdown, bit of a thud there, and slowing down for the exit.
Tango Bravo Sierra, turn exit taxiway.
Braking feels reasonable.
Contact ground on 119er.9er.
119er.9er for Tango Bravo Sierra.
Just get that boost pump off. We won't bother contacting ground and requesting taxi. I don't really like how the default ATC works currently in the sim. Strobe lights off, landing lights off, flaps can come up, transponder can go off. We'll just taxi somewhere over next to this other parked aircraft. Yeah, so we'll have a thorough debrief just after we've shut the aircraft down, but overall impressions actually really nice. Really enjoyed that flight. I think the Carenado Mooney Ovation's done very well actually. Again, it's not study level, it's not up to A2A standard perhaps, but as an aircraft with a retractable landing gear and complex engine with steam gauges as well, it's a really nice option for the sim currently. Obviously there's no other equivalent anyway, but yeah, it's a really good option in the sim. I'll definitely be flying it again. Keeping an eye on our wingtip. And we'll just park up somewhere next to this aircraft. Okay, park brake on. Just bring the engine back up to 1000 RPM. So shutdown, throttle at 1200 until cylinder head temperature starts to drop. That's already coming down slightly now. Radio master off. Electrical equipment switches off. We'll leave the nav and rotating beacon on for now. Cylinder head temperature is coming down slowly. Mixture idle cutoff. Throttle closed. Magnetos off. Parking brake is set. Trim is set for takeoff. Flaps are retracted. Master switch off. And that's us. As I said, we'll have a quick debrief on the overall state of the aircraft. But as far as the flight goes, that's the flight complete. Once again, I did really enjoy that flight. Very pleasant route in a very pleasant aircraft. So, what can I say about the Mooney Ovation from Carenado? Well, really overall I was actually very pleasantly surprised with the aircraft. I'd never like to tell somebody whether to buy something or not. Obviously a purchasing preference is a very personal choice and dependent on how much funding you have at the time. But I can give you my personal opinion on what I feel about the aircraft. Overall I certainly don't regret my purchase at all. I really enjoyed the flight in the aircraft. I'll certainly be flying it again within the simulator. Just to cover a few of the basics once again. Before we start, just to reiterate that this really is the basics. It was my first flight in the aircraft. So everything that you saw, it's the first time I've seen it as well. But certainly the visual model, both inside and out, a really great job from Carenado. Very happy with that. Flight model, as I said, the aircraft flies very nicely, flies very smoothly. Takeoff and landing was reasonable, taxiing was reasonable. The flight model, as I said, maybe feels a touch light and lacking a little bit in some weight and some inertia. But I haven't ever flown the Mooney Ovation in the real world, so I'm not really sure how true to life that is or not. The performance seemed pretty reasonable to me. The aircraft felt very powerful, very speedy. The aircraft certainly felt like it could get away from you quite quickly if you weren't managing the engine properly. In terms of the systems, I did have a quick look at the fuel burn figures in the real world. And I wouldn't say that Carenado necessarily has it 100% accurate, but it seemed to be within a reasonable ballpark. So that was all quite good. The systems as far as the navigation goes and the autopilot, things of that nature. Again, you saw everything in the flight, but I couldn't really find anything that wasn't working. And it seemed good enough to make a flight from A to B within the sim. The autopilot, as you saw, was a touch aggressive. That's not true to life, so hopefully that will see a fix at a later date. The sound, I have to say, again, hands up to Carenado. I really liked the sound. I thought the sounds were very immersive, very well done. And yes, just my overall opinion, as I say, it's really the kind of aircraft that I enjoy flying in the sim. Steam gauges, it adds a little bit of complexity with the retractable gear and the constant speed propeller. And with a nice high cruise speed, it gives you the opportunity to stretch your legs a little bit in the sim. Go and see some slightly more far-flung places on slightly longer flights. in a really enjoyable fashion. So once again, purely talking from my own perspective, but it's a purchase that I'm really happy that I made, an aircraft that I've really enjoyed flying, and an aircraft that I'll certainly be flying again within the sim. As I say, this really is just a mini review of the aircraft to help you make a better purchasing decision, so I hope that you have found the video useful. If you have, please consider giving it a like and subscribing to the channel. If you have any comments or questions for me, please leave them down in the comments section below and I'll do my best to answer them. But for now, thanks very much, and I'll see you all again soon.